Hi, welcome to PunchlineGloucester.com. Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hayswoods, accountants and business advisors, and they're over there behind me somewhere. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all our advertising sponsors, actually, because without them, we just couldn't do anything at all. Okay, let's meet the panel. We've got Guy Stenson, CEO of Gloucester City Homes. It's an independent housing association. They currently own and manage 5,000 homes with over 12,500 customers. They have 170 employees and a turnover of £30 million. GCH has plans to redevelop and regeneration of 11-storey Clapham Court tower block. That's the tallest block in Gloucester. I think the plan is to demolish it and to make way for a new lower level estate containing 36 homes. They also have a 50 million Podsmead regeneration scheme that is currently working its way through planning. So we'll find out where we are with that today from Guy. We have Paul Bence. He's the MD of George Bence Group. He's the sixth generation of the family to lead the business, celebrating 170th birthday this year. Happy birthday, Paul. And it's one of the oldest in Gloucestershire. The company employs 144 staff across 8 sites and a turnover of 38 million. Paul has just recently stepped down as the chairman of the Federation of Kitchens and Bathrooms, and he has also recently stepped down as vice chair of Cheltenham Town Football Club. The company has recently invested £500,000 in its luxury brand, Assyrian Interiors of Kitchens and Bathrooms. It's a flagship showroom and design house in Cheltenham. So we'll find out all about that and also about the marketplace at this particular moment for kitchens and bathrooms as well. We've got Lynette Barrett. She's the CEO of Gloucestershire-based charity National Star, which supports young people with complex disabilities. National Star has an average annual turnover of 46 million, employs more than 1,300 staff, full and part-time staff. So we'll find out about the fundraising and the difficulties of running this charity, especially now that more and more businesses are going to be under the cosh with the rise of national insurance contributions and things like this. So we'll find out all about that. And of course, she has an opportunity to plug a few events, I'm sure, as well in that. Okay, and finally, never last not least, we got Roman Cooper, is the MD of All Coopers Property, and he is the ex-owner of All Coopers Security. Roman Cooper and his brother Gerald Cooper sold the family business in 2019, and now he runs a property company. So we'll find out all about that. And does he really have his feet on the desk half the time snoozing away? Hopefully he does. Now he doesn't employ hundreds and hundreds of people. You must be going, thank God for that. Anyway, let's see, guys, what's making the headlines today, courtesy of the BBC. Here we go. He says, I did press the little button then. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that. It's the Financial Times. Bank of England has forecast for growth as rate cuts FT 100. The Daily Express. Rees wake-up call on putrid figures. The Times. Banks alert on growth gives Reeves new setback. The Daily Mail. New era of stagflation. The Guardian, fears over stagflation as Reeves growth plan suffers double blow. The Eye, new growth and inflation warning piles pressure on Reeves to boost flagging economy. The Daily Telegraph, bloated state is harming the economy. The Mirror, Chef Gino's sexual harassment comments. The Metro, bed blocked, hospitals are in crisis over winter vomiting bug. The Sun, my Liam dreamed of One Direction reunion. And the Daily Star, Boffins, lazy gits live longer. My goodness, that's me going early then. Thank you very much to the panel for joining us today. Who should I start with today? I'm going to start with you, Paul. Actually, you're the newbie on the show. But before we go into your pick, I just want to say about the economy. And I can't ignore those headlines there. What's your general view, your take on things?
Pretty grim, I think, and obviously the headlines have picked up on that this morning. I was slightly surprised to see the rate go down a quarter, and a bit more surprised to think that two of them voted that it should be more, because I didn't think we would lose more than 0.5% during this year, and I think that we might by the end of the year get down to 3 point something now. which I suppose is the slight positive. And you see, Sir Keir saying yesterday, build, baby, build. And just going back to what he said in October, especially with me in construction, when he said build, 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 and he got me really excited and said, I'm going to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Now, the last time that happened of 300,000 homes in 1 year, let alone in 5 years, was back in 1969. And then in January, himself and Reeve turned around and said, let's stimulate growth. And I was getting really excited about that. And then they said, we're just going to build a runway in Heathrow in 10 years' time, which got me a bit deflated again. And then obviously the build, baby, build yesterday, I thought, oh my goodness me, this is like the third time, maybe third time lucky. And then he just said he's going to build a nuclear plant somewhere. So, and I think on that one, it's, the homes to be built over the next 5 years, it's normally the construction industry which pushes the economy into a recession. It's the first one that brings it out. But I know we'll probably come on to it, but planning constraints are terrible. So I'm sure Guy will pick up on that from his position. There's a chronic lack of skilled workers. Our sector needs over 50,000 extra workers a year to meet the levels of work expected to get to that 1.5 million. And there's concerns on availability of building materials. There's a rising cost of development, and housing experts are saying that why would private house builders want to do this anyway? Because their average home price would go down. And then coming back to high interest rates and high house prices, it's just not it's a bit of a perfect storm at the moment, and let alone what's coming in April for our businesses with the NI and the national living wage. Business property relief for farmers and businesses like us, family run independent businesses, is the future. Looks pretty bleak on that as well. We've been going 171 years now. And if something happens over the next, after April next year, I've suddenly got to find £8 million just to keep my family business running, and that's not sort of money, cash flow we have, because we generally try and invest it back into what we have here.
I know, goodness, this is it, and all the headlines see it. I mean, I've said from the very beginning, there's no way on earth you could build 1.5 million homes. There's not enough bricks. There's not enough people. There's not enough plumbers. There's not enough anybody. Anyway, let's go. You picked out some more cheerier stories in the papers, Paul. Let's just move very quickly. Rattle through what you've got there, Rob.
Well, it's the first time in my life I've ever bought the Daily Star, because obviously I could go on a major rant for an hour about everything, but the one you mentioned earlier is lazy gits live longer, and maybe we've all got it wrong. Relaxing on the sofa, having a good sleep, and not overdoing it at work could help you live an extra 10 years. And I thought that was it sounds very appealing. And I don't know why we're picking on Roman already, but he's a few years ahead of us, I think, on that one. Especially his brother Jez, who's now a stand-up comedian. I've yet to hear him yet to see how good he is, but maybe we can come on to that. But also another one which I thought was fascinating was the Super Bowl, which is coming up this weekend, the greatest sporting event in the world. And Seal, that famous icon, pop icon, he's actually been made to look into a seal, which I thought was very bizarre, but it made me smile. And then the other one was apparently the perfect egg takes 32 minutes. And now, as a former chef, Mark, or a chef, you might have something to say about that. But the reason why is the albumen cooks at 85 degrees Celsius, while the yolk cooks at 65 degrees. So that's why you should move it into another pan.
Now, it might actually, I'm just going to say this, after someone who's cooked thousands of eggs in my time, not being funny. If you cook an egg for 30 odd minutes and let it stand and cool down, when you actually cut it open, it will actually have a black ring around the yolk. Simple as that.
Well, I don't think the Daily Star are going to get that wrong, Mark. It's a factual newspaper. And the last one I've got is apparently a job as a builder is trendy. So, and that's come from a research by On the Tools. So I thought that was a really smiley story for me as well.
Well, I think you'll be running down the newsagents every day now to buy the Daily Star after that.
I might well be. I'm going to get it on subscription, I think, because the last time I bought a paper like this, I think it was 20p. It's £1.10 now. That's surely that's Sunday sort of paper pricing, isn't it? So
You get a nosebleed buying these papers. Okay, that leads us very nicely with the about the construction side. That leads us very nicely to the Guy, who obviously employs lots of builders and people. Guy, what have you picked out from the papers? Thanks for that, Paul.
So I was looking for some good news stories and failed. So I'm going to stick to housing today. So a couple of stories I've seen. So in the Mirror reporting that apparently council house waiting lists could hit 2 million people within the next decade. Don't know how they've done the calculations, but I think what we do know is that even right now that the number of people in need of a home is kind of the highest it's been in years for a whole variety of factors, not least actually, as Paul's already talked about, nobody's been really building homes, or certainly not affordable homes for a very long time. We know, just for example, that here in England right now, there's more children, young people living in temporary accommodation than the entire population of Gloucester. So actually, I think it's a story that really does highlight the need for some of this investment in making sure that there are homes, but actually more importantly, homes that people can afford. A couple of parallel or sort of related, I think, stories too. So yesterday, seeing that the government's announced a timeline for the introduction of Arab's Law, which is the law that was introduced after the tragic death of a young boy in Rochdale. We're making sure that landlords are setting some timelines in terms of the making sure that they're going in and doing those safety critical improvements. So announced yesterday that for when there's damp and mold, in the most critical, it should be sorted within 24 hours. Was it quite rightly should, and within 2 weeks for sort of less urgent work. For us here in Gloucester, that's not an issue. We're working to those timelines already, well, slightly better actually, but it will be putting pressure on some of those landlords who are struggling. And it also talked about the introduction next year of a broader range of timescales for kind of other repairs within homes. And again, I heard this morning on the radio, whilst at the same time hearing about the boiled egg. Again, government starting a consultation today, a 12-week consultation around the introduction of requirements on private sector landlords to make sure their homes are energy efficient by 2030, something that the previous government had talked about and then didn't progress, but is now coming back to consultation. And again, the benefits of that are, from a tenant perspective, obviously their homes will be safer, warmer, sort of drier. The challenge, and I think links back into the potential homelessness, is actually the cost of doing that to fall on landlords who we know are many private sector landlords are struggling financially due to the cost of their mortgages, although maybe yesterday's news might have a positive impact on that. But actually, the concerns to make sure those energy improvements are made on homes, the cost has got to come from somewhere, whether it comes from the landlord and their only income stream is generally the rent, or it's got to come from somewhere else. I think the average cost is talking about sort of 6 to 12,000 pounds per home. Again, it's a requirement on us within the social housing sector already, and it will hopefully make sure that everybody has a home that they is in a better state. But it does put pressure on the system, on everybody.
And you can see why a lot of people are moving out of the rental market as well, from being a landlord. Thanks ever so much for that, Guy. Okay, Lynette, it's great to have you back on the show again. What have you picked out for us, please?
So, looking at the interest rate cut, and I think I was equally as surprised as Paul was. But also there was a story around Yvette Cooper stating that we need much tighter security in our schools, looking at metal detectors being installed in schools as a solution to knife crime taking place. And as you read through the article, I think there's a strong sense that actually that's probably not the solution to the problem, and there needs to be much more consideration as to why children are carrying knives, what is happening in their lives outside of school, etc., to make them feel that they need to protect themselves or wanting to threaten others, etc. And I think it also feeds into the wider economic issues, the housing issue. I think Guy was just saying how many people are children living in temporary accommodation, lack of stability, all of those things. I don't know. It just felt like that's not the solution to this problem, and quite sad and depressing, really, in terms of where we are with knife crime and young people.
It's like this, come up with this idea of we should only sell non-pointy knives. They should all be rounded off, you know.
Yeah,
So the whole population will not be able to have pointy knives because of a small number of people who have lots of other issues. But that seems to be. Have you got another story there quickly, Lynette?
So I was just looking in terms of the interest rate cut and the effect that might have positively. So trying to look for something positive. That was about the only thing I could find in the Telegraph while I was going through. I think in terms of that cut, again, it's one of those. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, really. So yes, hopefully that will help some families, and all sorts of business people out there as well with that slight cut. But I don't know, it doesn't feel like that's a true indication of the climate at the moment. And it feels like we're trying to, or government are trying to force something that could have sort of unintended consequences in the long run. So yeah, they're looking at probably being down to about 3.5, 3.75 by the end of this year, which there are lots of positives to that, but I think we need to wait and see.
Okay, fingers crossed for that as well. Thanks ever so much for that. Roman, great to have you on the show. Great to see you again, mate, as well. Last time I saw you face to face, we were wandering through King's Walk Shopping Centre, actually, which was a bit of a surprise.
That's it. Yeah, you were touring some people around the city, our wonderful city.
Okay. Anyway, so what have you picked out for us, please, mate?
Just a very small point. I mean, everybody here is running businesses or running organisations that are quite stressful anyway. And one of the points is in the Times today, just a very small article. It says the headline is "Long-term sick must try to work." And then there's a situation that Liz Kendall says that she's the Work and Pension Secretary, that we can't have a situation where doing a day's work is in itself seen as stressful. So I think on the basis that most jobs have a degree of stress with them, that it's not an excuse not to go to work. I mean, it's crackers, isn't it? But that's just an observation. One of the other things that came up, I think it's in all the press, but this particular one in the Sun today: no English, no maths, and you're fired. This is a potential discussion around reducing the need for GCSEs in English and maths to be able to start an apprenticeship. It feels like you're going back in time a little bit, but in our experiences, running and employing literally dozens and dozens of apprentices over the years, some of our best guys came out of school without any qualifications, and they went on to apprenticeships and they were supported through that. In our industry, it was electronic, and so there was a requirement to understand maths. But I think once they applied it in the workplace, like actually physically using batteries and working out current rates and things, they were able to apply the logic. So I think it's really important that people are able to have English and maths. But I think that if they can do it in the context of an apprenticeship rather than having to wait to start your apprenticeship, and do it, I think I think on balance it's probably a good thing. And then finally, Mark, this is one that will appeal to you, and it says again in the Sun, a 2-hour nap helps to solve puzzles. There's an experiment carried out where they split a group of 58 people, and half of them had a 2-hour nap. They were given them difficult puzzles to solve, and half of them were asked to have a 2-hour nap, and the other half weren't. And the half that had a nap were much better at solving problems afterwards. So obviously your working style and technique is you're ahead of the game. Perfect.
It's the secret to my success. You've got me there. I just want to say also about maths and English and things like that. It's a bit like, I just don't understand why a policeman needs a degree nowadays, or a nurse, and they never used to do that. It was all done by experience over a long period of time. Anyway, that's another ball game, another conversation. I spoke sure for another day. Thanks ever so much for the roundup of the papers, Paul. Let's go back over to you. I'm going to bring up your Assyrian, if I can. Let me have a look. So hopefully you can see your kitchens there.
Yes, beautiful.
Cool. Great stuff. So I was at the launch of your revamped showroom. It was absolutely fantastic. £500,000 you've spent on it. Can you tell us why you've gone down this route?
Probably because we made the investment decision about a year ago. It probably would have changed now, but so Obsidian was sort of born about 20 years ago, and as a sort of general builders merchants, we want to diversify into other areas. I think Bence is certainly known as bricks and blocks and plasterboard. So by sort of changing the name, it gave us a bit more sort of kudos. Even we've got two showrooms, one in Bolton-on-the-Water and one here in Cheltenham Town Centre. And although kitchen and bathrooms on a survey with Howes actually, they're saying the average value of kitchens and bathrooms are going up, the volume of it is going down. So during COVID, a lot of people sort of did the don't move, improve. And so kitchens, bathrooms, landscaping certainly went up, and then it took a big drop. And with Obsidian, we've got Bence kitchens and bathrooms as well, which is sort of more budget minded. But where we've sort of gone is sort of above the clouds. So very expensive and exclusive kitchens and bathrooms, very much a hand holding with our designers in our two showrooms. And we wanted, especially sort of where we are, with a bit of a commuter belt or second homes for people from London or expats living away. And we want to entice people away from going into the M25 and into Cheltenham. So, key influences like architects, interior designers, estate agents as well, sort of the Knight Franks and Savills of this world, is we want them to bring their people into our showroom, along with high-end developers as well. So I'm not biased, but I think what we've done is something which a lot of our suppliers who came last week to our opening said that, there's nothing like this anywhere around here. Someone mentioned Nottingham and Edinburgh, which is music to my ears. And we're lucky enough to have Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen come in and open it. I know Lawrence very well. He did me a favour and popped in, and we didn't have black walls. There's some black tiles, and he liked what he saw as well. I know, knowing Lawrence, if he didn't like it, he would have told me as well.
Yeah, it looks absolutely fantastic. And it was a great crowd as well, because you split it into two, didn't you? Which is unusual for a launch event. So the first half of the people were more professional. The second half, just quickly explain about that.
Yeah, so we had professional services, really, as I said, the key influencers and also retail clients coming to our first opening, which Paul Baker did, who's he's a friend of mine, Mayor of Cheltenham now, but I worked with him at Cheltenham Town Football Club for many years. And then because we wanted to make it a little bit more niche, a bit more exclusive, so we had about 100 to the first one, and then 100 to the evening one, where we sort of had more builders, developers, plumbers, and those sort of people are sort of clientele on that side. And it just worked really well. And sort of the easy bit is getting the showroom done. It took a lot longer than it should have, but we wanted to get it right. So it's about a 5-month program, way over budget as well. But now the hard work starts with doing SEO and enticing people into the show. And we've got a great spot here in the centre of town. We're probably the last bit of industry left on the ring road here in Cheltenham, and it's a good location. So we certainly encourage everybody to come to us for kitchens and bathrooms of any size and value.
And you also have the place in Bolton-on-the-Water as well, which I was quite surprised when you opened that quite a few years ago, because it was away from from the old from Cheltenham, where you're very well known. I thought it was a brave move, actually, to open that in Bolton-on-the-Water.
Yeah, well, we did get a little bit of a nosebleed going over the hills and the other side there. It's still in the GL postcode. But when I took the business on about 14 years ago, we'd been one branch for a long time, and I really wanted to push our network and our satellite sites and take a bit of pressure off Cheltenham Centre as well. So, that was certainly part of the plan to sort of think, well, I'm just going to put a mixed merchant, like a Travis Perkins or some of the nationals who just plop the same everywhere. We wanted to know what the particular area wanted. So Bourton and Water, we felt needed a nice posh showroom, but also needed a mixed merchant. So we got our Bence premises up on the Foss Way. Same with Ledbury. That's even further for us. That is a different postcode. And then we've obviously got our roofing and plumbing branches in Cheltenham, a doors and windows supply and fit business, which we started 2 years ago, which is going really well, and an online business in Abingdon where we do about 400k a month with B&Q Marketplace now. So a lot of people don't realize that B&Q is actually a marketplace, or DIY.com is, and we're working really well with them at the moment.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks ever so much for that. I've been to all your showrooms, delivering magazines over the years, by the way. Just want to add that too. Thanks ever so much for that. Guy, let's bring you in because you've got so many different projects going on and really big. You're going to change the landscape of the city. I think a lot of people don't realize this, where we've got Clapham Court with the largest tower building in Gloucestershire, apart from the cathedral. It's the big. You've got problems with planning there, isn't it? Can you just give us an overview very quickly about the scheme?
Yeah, so the decision was made about 4 or 5 years ago to demolish the tower. It's safe, it's sound, but it does require very significant investment to sort of keep it into the future, which is just not financially sustainable. So the decision was made to demolish it and to replace it by a bigger mix of homes in that community. We submitted plans to planning committee, Gloucester City Council, about a year ago. Sadly, a little before Christmas, ultimately the planning committee said no to our plans, and so it's a bit back to the drawing board, really. The issue, the biggest issue seems to be a concern around car parking. Something if I'm fair, to be fair, struggling to understand. So the current tower block comes with about 160 parking permits in the area. The new proposed scheme we had would come with 72, which in my maths is a reduction, but certainly councillors were concerned that it would cause problems in the area. But we're back to the drawing board, looking at all options, how we can make the site work. Obviously, it's got to stack up financially. For us, if we're going to be developing it, it's important that we're able to bring 100% social rent, so genuine affordable homes to the site. We're working on that. We're hoping to get councillors and other interested people back onto the site to see our revised plans in the next few weeks, and hopefully get back into planning. In the meantime, it's costing us. We're now liable for the council tax on the empty flats which is obviously kind of cutting away. What it has enabled us to do is we're using a number of the flats in Clapham Tower to support and provide temporary accommodation for as we talked about earlier, but there's a significant number in there. The costs are continuing to increase, and so who knows where it's going, but we're very keen we're keeping going to make that scheme work.
I didn't realise that you'd still have to pay the costs on the tower.
Well, yeah, absolutely. The cost of keeping a half-empty tower are quite considerable. But,
wow, yeah. Can you tell us?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're continuing to maintain it and keep it kind of safe. I haven't here off the top of my head, I haven't got the figure, but I mean, certainly, I mean, we've spent just on the proposed development, we spent about £500,000 to get this far in all. So we're continuing to maintain the scheme. But I think the bit that we do struggle with is obviously the additional costs, like paying council tax on empty flats is obviously it's our tenants' money that is funding that, and we'd much rather be using that money to provide the homes. We would, but yeah.
I've got to say, Guy, let's be honest about this. This is not a quick process either, and we all know that. Anybody deal with planning, I get this all the time. It is a very, very slow process.
Very, very slow. So on screen now, you've got a picture of our plans for Podsmead, and that's a scheme genuinely started 7 years ago. Lots and lots of work with the community to develop those working in partnership actually with the city council and others to develop that initiative. 7 years in the making, and again is well, moving very, very slowly. As you mentioned in the introduction, it's a £50 million scheme, 30 million of which we're funding through our own business plan borrowing we have in place. and we've been able to secure £20 million in grant funding from Homes England. Condition of that, though, is that we're on site by end of March. And we're stuck in planning, and sadly the goalposts keep moving. We continue to get asked for more and more information. Just in the last couple of weeks, a request for us to go and find 2 hectares outside of the area, find a bit of land that we can improve and to compensate for the potential loss of green space. But that had always been part of the deal. We were enhancing that the 4 hectares of land that were going to be transferred to us. And only yesterday we heard that whilst the Highways Authority has already responded to the planning application, planners have asked them to revise their submission and to take into account the impact on the wider community beyond the development site. So all of which again comes at cost to us and delay, and puts that 20 million grant funding into Gloucester at risk. But we're determined to make this happen, because if we can possibly do so, because we know providing these homes is vitally important.
And what makes it worse is that, this is a very poor, deprived area. And
yeah, it's an area. It's an area where people love to live, but it's an area that needs investment. And there's as a part of our proposals is about bringing some improved retail. So bringing in a sort of supermarket, for example, and kind of other. Because currently there is very limited provision in the area. It's about improving the access routes in and out of Podsmead. Although it's relatively close to the city centre, it's kind of a bit isolated, a bit of an island.
Yeah.
So much of that investment is, as I say, it's not just about the 170 odd homes that we'd be looking to build. It is about investing in improving the quality of that lived environment. But it'd be a devastating loss if we lose the £20 million, because actually it does mean that the scheme won't go ahead. Actually, and reality is we know that the costs of doing anything are increasing. It's never a scheme that's been particularly financially viable for us, but we've been determined to make it happen. But the more and more costs that pile in, the less likely it is, if I'm honest.
There's nobody there to jump in your place. I mean, this is the thing. It's the council fighting the council in some ways, because the council want this done, and it's the town planners that are stopping it.
Well, I'm not sure. I wouldn't blame it all on the planners. I think there's lots of people involved. The planners are very influential in this, and there's definitely issues with planning across the country in the city. So, as saying earlier, we have five schemes, 5 separate planning applications in with the city council, all of which are stalled in various different ways. We are continuing to develop and build, and so we've had early the last couple of months, a new scheme in just over the border in Stroud, which we were pleased to see progress, and again, and similarly in Tewkesbury Borough, with a number of proposals going through. So we're continuing to invest and grow homes, but struggling with to get these through.
Well, give all the very best, and we can help you in any way. Obviously, promote and highlight the difficulties that you have, Guy. Then here at Punchline, we're more than happy to help. Thanks ever so much for giving us an honest overview there. Lynette, let's come over to you. Obviously, the National Star College is very, very well known. You help thousands of people with severe learning disabilities. I've been over to the site a number of times myself as well. Can you tell us, please, how difficult it is, or is it not difficult to fundraise in this current climate?
Yeah, so as everything gets tighter for people, obviously fundraising is really difficult. Now, student placements are paid for by local authorities. So, and we work with about 48 local authorities across the country. So it's not just Gloucestershire that we work with. But all of our fundraising pays for any equipment, facilities, new buildings. So everything you see if you visit Allenwood and come to the Star Bistro and maybe speak to one of us and get a tour to see what National Star do and what we're about, and meet some of our students. All of that is paid for via fundraising, and that it gets more difficult. We've got a superb fundraising team at National Star, and they work really hard it's not just about fundraising an event, it's about building relationships. So it's about making sure that those that support us really understand what we do, why we do it, and the impact that it has on people's lives. And while maintaining those relationships, also building new ones and introducing new people to the charity. And our fundraising team do a superb job with that, but it does get increasingly difficult in terms of there's more charities out there looking for support, and all of those charities are deserving. So yeah, it can be a challenge, but we keep going, and we are very fortunate to have some very good supporters. So yeah.
Well, give us some you've got some events coming up, haven't you?
We have. So the event that we've got coming up quite soon is the Sunrise Walk. I've done the Sunrise Walk myself. So it is a very early start. It's on the 6th of April. So early start on a Sunday morning. But you meet at Ellenwood with a great bunch of people and head out in the dark and then come across the Cotswold hills and see the sunrise come up. And I can say it is absolutely beautiful. So it's worth doing. There's 2 routes. There's a 13k route and a 3k accessible route. So you can take your pick. And that raises, vital funds for the charity. And we've always been really well supported on that event. So we're really looking forward to it. And we're now just starting conversations about how we're going to go about celebrating the charity's 60th anniversary. So 2026 will be the 60th anniversary. It doesn't seem 2 minutes since we actually celebrated the 50th. So just time flies, they say. So so we're just starting to consider what events we're going to operate, etc., and how we're going to celebrate that 60th anniversary in 2026.
Okay, thank you ever so much for that. And of course, you've been there a long time, Lynette. Remember, you started your whole career. If you don't mind me saying,
pretty much. It was a few years just before, but yeah, I've been there 24 years, so I've been there a huge amount of time. And watched the charity diversify, change, expand. And yeah, I'm very fortunate. It's if you work somewhere that is constantly evolving, changing, but keeping very similar values and culture, you don't need to move organisations. You get all the stimulation you need from staying put.
I just want to say I really enjoyed our big interview as well. I found you're absolutely an inspiration. It was a wonderful story. Thank you ever so much for that. Okay, Roman, let's go over to you as well. Great to see you. So, Roman, what have you been up to? I just want to say you must be so glad that you had how many staff did you have at All Coopers Security?
110.
110. So now, not being funny with the rise of national insurance contributions, all these things coming down the tracks, you must be thinking to yourself, thank God I sold up when I did.
Well, it was just before COVID, so the timing sort of worked out all right. We had we had a lot of really great staff, and we had some people who worked for us for over 20 years. So there was, like Lynette said there, it's only when you've had time away from the business that you try and sort of rationalize it and put it into context, because you're in the sort of eye of the storm all the time. So yeah, so it was obviously we had our own culture. Every organization does. We had some great people for a very long time. So what we hoped when we sold the business, that they would, that business would grow into being, and the staff would have greater opportunities that we were able to offer them. Ultimately, we were in our 50s, but we didn't have much of a succession plan in place. And although you employ 110 people and all the rest of it, actually, it was about Gerard and I, and the business still quite heavily revolved around us too. So we were trying to sort of de-risk it, and the opportunity came to sell, so we took it, and it was to our biggest customer, as it turned out, and we weren't actually for sale. That they just approached us and said, look, we like what you do. Can we discuss something? So yeah, so in hindsight, that was a great thing, and it's a bit odd only ever having work if you're a bit institutionalized in a family business. Paul would know, very much so. And and so we don't have offices, we don't employ anyone, we don't have to worry about IT too much. We don't, so there's lots of things that are de-stressed, but you do miss the sort of collegiate relationships that you've got, even though you might be the boss and some things are difficult, you do miss that. So I'm involved in a charity I live down in Frampton on Severn, I'm involved in a charity there, and that seems to sort of tick a box in terms of, you know, that having a group of people that you work with is quite an interesting, you know, dynamic, really.
Yeah.
But
And your property side of things, just very briefly, what property do you own? Obviously, you still own the old All Cooper building, don't you? Which is now
yeah,
empty.
yeah. So in Kingsholm, we converted that when we bought it from a sort of derelict car dealership, and now that's got 11 units on there, 11 offices, and they're all fully let. And we've got a couple of other little places in Gloucester as well. It's only shops and a little lockup. So nothing earth-shattering. It sort of suits us at the time being. But again, going back to Paul and everyone's sort of comments, really, the temptation is to, or our natural instinct is to invest and try and grow it. But all the evidence will point to pulling your horns in and keeping things tight. And that kind of, you know, that's just an attitude. It's something that isn't, you can't write, you know, you can read all the bad news stories in the papers, but there's always bad news stories in the papers. But it just feels that conditions are going to, you know, are difficult. And when you think about Guy, you know, potentially, I don't know, £100 million worth of development work, you know, going into Gloucestershire, that would help our GVA. That would help, you know, that would help Paul. There would be materials being bought, and it's being held up, and for all the right reasons, I guess. You know, I guess you'd like to think that everybody's working in our best interest. You know, that's £100 million potentially, or whatever it is, could be spent in Gloucestershire over the next couple of years from one organisation. So,
No, without a shadow of doubt. And that, I think that's the most frustrating thing of all, is it's holding up, and it won't move very fast forward. You know, they might hold it up for very good reasons, but they're not going to move it any quicker forward. Anyway, thanks ever so much for you guys. I think we're going to have to move very quickly, please, through the pick of the punchlines. I'm going to start with you, Lynette. What have you picked out from Punchline, please?
So I chose the Bromford housing company that we're talking about how, you know, in terms of the building company, they need to look at flexible working, how that's going to be affecting their business in future years. But they're wanting to lead the way. So they're wanting to sort of set out their stall and really embrace flexible working for tradespeople, which is going to be really, you know, really interesting. I think flexible working is going to be expected more and more. If you look at the employment laws that are going to come in the next couple of years, this, you know, flexible working is going to be top of that list. So I think all employers need to be embracing this rather than being a little bit defensive and wary of it.
I totally agree. Okay, thanks for that. Guy, what have you picked out for Punchline, please? Pick the punchlines.
Funnily enough, I'd pick the same story, and I think that and it's we do see that we all need to be more flexible and look at different options. And we know there's a massive skills shortage in key areas, and actually it's a good response to that. I'm heading off straight from here actually for conversation with all the other, including Bromford, Gloucestershire-based housing associations, where we are looking at skills for the future. So great story there to see what they're up to.
Okay, thank you for that. Paul, what have you picked out for Punchline, please?
Just before that, just picking up on what Roman was saying, and obviously it's relevant to Guy with Gloucester City Homes, because, you know, those planning issues are really quite major, because Guy sat on there with property you can't move on and rehome people, and I know that they use Aqua, Jason Wasley, a lot, and Jason uses us. So when you push that down the supply chain, it's all stopped. You know, so Jason can't buy off me for that. There's doors and windows and bricks and stuff, and it just it's really, really frustrating. Anyway, my story from Punchline, I mean, it would have been a story which you didn't put on there, which would have been that Paul Bence was mentioned in Parliament by his local MP Max Wilkinson. But you didn't mention that. But I'll give Max
wait,
a
hold on a
plug.
second, Paul. No, we wrote that story, mate.
Oh, I do apologise then.
Right,
So it wasn't that story, but that was on there. But because Max gave me a plug in Parliament, I've given Max a plug on Punchline. I'm meeting for a beer later at 5 o'clock, actually, so he's going to hear more rants from me. But the one I picked out was tradespeople demand urgent action on tool theft, and I see this firsthand, actually. The you know, not just on like Facebook and stuff that people say I've had my tools stolen, and it really, really grates on me that people do this in society and just get away with it, because They never get caught. They sell it on the black market or down the local high street, whatever, for pennies. And it's thousands of pounds of tools that's it's the livelihood. That person or that business can't go to work for a week or so until they invest in £4,000 or £5,000 worth more of tools. So we always hear just give it them at cost price when they come in, but it's happening far too regularly. So I just picked up on that story from earlier in the week.
No, thanks very much. That story did extremely well as well, actually, goes to show. Roman, what have you picked out very quickly?
Just that we're lucky enough in Gloucestershire to be having our county council elections. So you think that would be a kind of prerequisite, and I know that there's this push for devolution, and there's some consideration around that. I spent a few years. I was lucky enough to sit on the LEP for a few years ago, and there was lots of talk about unitary councils and goodness knows what, and Gloucester and Cotswold district moving to West Oxfordshire, and so I don't really know the ups and downs and insides out of it. And that's why your publication gives us a valuable insight, Mark, which is very grateful for that, because we don't necessarily get that from many other sources. So the fact that we've actually got elections is a kind of democratic right, it feels to me, irrespective of what they're going to do to shuffle the borders around or and do something. But I do feel, having been on that LEP, that having 6 district councils and 1 county council just seemed archaic. It might have been fine when people were going into their council offices, but it just seems an oddity. However, I would have thought that almost a 2-level county, almost like a county district and a county council, one doing the tactical stuff and one doing the strategic stuff, might have fitted better and created a dynamic tension. But I think they've got other things that they're discussing. But yeah, to be able to vote for your county councillors is important, and I think that I'm glad that Gloucestershire is doing that.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. I think it's a story that's just going to run and run and run. The whole devolution thing is a big story. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. I just want to thank my fantastic panel. Thanks, guys, for coming on to the show. Really enjoyed it. I'd like to thank our wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back again next week. But in between, remember, until then, it's all in the punchline. Thank you very much. Bye.